All right, welcome back to Just Browsing, the podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Zach Jones, and here with my buddy Matt. And we're here to break down the round of 32 for our best movie franchise of all time bracket. And I think if you just want to dive in, we should just dive into the matchups, Matt.
All right, we're diving in.
No trivia this time, just matchups.
So we did a bit of research on any forgotten franchises.
Oh, that's right.
So here's a few that we found. Nothing, out of this world, but we did come up with Alvin and the Chipmunks for all of you little Chipmunk fans. Barbershop actually is a franchise with more than 3 movies. The Grudge, which no one cares about. Jumanji actually breaks into the movie franchises because of the old Robin Williams one, followed by Zathura, and then the 2 new Jumanjis with The Rock and that little short guy that's not very funny.
Kevin Hart.
Yeah, that guy.
Which, by the way, quick sidebar, you were explaining to me that Zathura was considered part of the Jumanji franchise right before we started this. For anyone else out there who was like me and had no earthly idea what that movie was, it was called Zathura, A Space Adventure. It came out in 2005, and somehow that's in the Jumanji franchise. I'm not really sure. But, yeah, the more you know.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that until today.
And then we got the Lego movies, which are obviously fantastic and might win some brackets if you're smart. Men in Black, because of the newest movie. And then Tremors. Which
is a great franchise.
Those are a few forgotten franchises. I don't necessarily see them really breaking too much on anyone's brackets. Maybe Jumanji would or Men in Black, but...
Yeah, those were a few that if we had thought of them, we could have included them, but really...
They would have been like 14, 15, or 16 seeds.
Yeah, and I mean, when we're breaking this down, we already have 64 franchises that are super well-known, very popular,
right,
very successful franchises. I don't think any of those deserve to beat out or replace any of the ones we already have.
Maybe Medea with Men in Black or Jumanji, but...
Yeah.
Alvin and the Chipmunks, in my opinion, doesn't deserve to be.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's out there just really pulling for Alvin and the Chipmunks over Hunger Games or something.
I agree. But with that being said, let's get into our first matchup in the round of 32. So let's see who our first Sweet 16 member is. I think it's going to be pretty easy between Star Wars and the Hunger Games. We both had those 2 in moving on. So I went with Star Wars. To me, that's pretty easy. It's kind of a no-brainer. We can quickly move on again because, we don't need to talk about it. It's just that easy.
Yeah, that's our first round 2 matchup in the East region there, round of 32, Star Wars versus the Hunger Games. Nothing against the Hunger Games. I really like that franchise. I think they're really good movies, but they just don't have anything on Star Wars. I don't think they're in the same league. So that's a pretty easy selection for me. That's my favorite franchise of all time. So Star Wars moving on to the Sweet 16 for me.
Yeah.
So no disparity there.
No. Then we get to our first, matchup where we had issues last week with Paranormal Activity and National Lampoon. I went with National Lampoon. So they'll be going toe-to-toe against Alien, and as much as I love National Lampoon, I had to give Alien the nudge on this one. It's another one of those just iconic movie franchises. The way they shot the movies, just the scenes that come out of it's just, I'd much rather watch an Alien movie than a National Lampoon, unless it's, Christmas time. I'm not going to watch Alien. I'm going to watch National Lampoon, but any other day of the week.
If you would have picked National Lampoon over Alien, I would have looked at you like you were fucking high. But yeah, that's a good decision. I had on that matchup that was one of the very first times that Matt and I actually disagreed on one of our matchups from the first round. I actually had Paranormal Activity beating National Lampoon to go on and face the Alien franchise. So in my bracket, it's Paranormal Activity going up against Alien. And I like the Paranormal Activity movies. I think they're pretty good found footage horror movies, but I think the Alien franchise is just much, much stronger on average. The first 2 are really, really excellent. I think the immediate sequel is one of the best sequels ever made. And I think the prequels, like the new ones they've been making, have not been exactly raved upon by critics, but they're still really visually stunning movies, super entertaining to watch. And the Xenomorph or whatever they call it from the Alien movies is one of the most iconic movie villains ever. And yeah, I think this one's pretty easy for me. I went Alien over Paranormal Activity.
Yep. Another easy one.
Yeah. So moving on down, still in the East region, second round. I think we agreed on this one, so we have the same two matchups here. We got Mad Max versus X-Men. And this one was one of the first ones I had to, in this second round here, kind of take a second and think about. I went with X-Men. I just think X-Men has more movies that are better. I mean, they have more movies total, but I just think there are more movies in the X-Men franchise that are like decent to really good than the Mad Max movies. I think Mad Max obviously has, like I said on our last episode, that most recent one, Mad Max Fury Road, is one of the best movies ever made. But the other three, unless you're really going out of your way to watch them, I don't think I'd rather sit down and watch Mad Max than any of the X-Men movies. I think all the X-Men movies, even the bad ones, are pretty entertaining. And with X-Men 2, you got Logan in there, which we've discussed is one of the best superhero movies ever made. Yeah. So yeah, this one to me, I went X-Men over Mad Max.
I agreed. Same ideas there. And one of the biggest things is I love Deadpool. I think he's just an iconic. I don't even know if I'd call him a superhero because he doesn't necessarily do like superhero.
It's kind of like an anti-hero, I guess.
It's like an anti-hero that like works with heroes, but just does his own shit to revenge some type of thing that happened to him.
Yeah.
But he's hilarious. I love that. And then, Logan, I mean, it brings the end. Oh, spoiler alert. It brings the end to probably the most iconic X-Men of all time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
hey, quick question for you. What did you think of Deadpool 2?
I liked it. I don't know. Deadpool 1 is... just the original Deadpool is going to be hard to match up against.
Yeah, I think the first one is vastly superior. The second one was okay. When Taya and I went to see it, she was not a fan of the second one. And we both really liked the first one.
I think the storyline was just a little darker. It wasn't as funny that kind of got you, I mean, there was funny scenes in it, but you had, a kid that was getting bullied on and picked on, and a guy that had lost his family, so it all tied together, and it's like, well, wait, this dude just lost his wife. This dude lost his wife and kid. This kid's an orphan and is getting bullied and, mistreated. It's not like it was just an adult, funny movie. It kind of tied in some serious things, and I liked the movie. There was still funny parts in it, but it kind of had that little darker edge to it if you kind of dissect it more. And
yeah, I thought there was just a lot going on. I think that was the biggest thing against it is there was just too much. They made the plot overly complicated, it seemed like, with the whole time travel and all that kind of stuff. I thought Josh Brolin was pretty badass as the villain in that one. And was he Cable? Is that his name in that one? Yeah, he's pretty badass as a villain in that one. But the first one, I think, is way better.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a little random sidebar on that one. But yeah, X-Men, we both have moving on over Mad Max. So with the next matchup there in the East region, here's another one where one of the franchises, I almost said teams, one of the franchises here in this matchup, we actually disagreed upon in round one. So I have Insidious versus Mission Impossible, whereas you have Mission Impossible versus The Mummy, I believe, right? You had The Mummy going on. So on this one, I didn't think about it too long. I think the decision for me is pretty obvious. I went with Mission Impossible. I really like the Insidious movies, but I've only seen the first two. I think the first two are some of the best horror movies ever made. They're some of my favorite horror movies. But I've seen all, I think, 6 now of the Mission Impossible movies, and they're just awesome. I'd never get tired of watching those movies. And as I was explaining in our last episode, they're literally getting better with every movie. The ratings get better in terms of the critic reception. So, yeah, I went with Mission Impossible. I'd much rather sit down and watch a badass, like, spy Tom Cruise movie than get the shit scared out of me with this weird, like, go to sleep in this other dimension and get tormented by demons plot line. So that's just kind of where I landed with that one.
Well, and on a side note with that, I don't know what I was watching or how it got brought up, but Tom Cruise got brought up about how he does his own stunts.
Yeah.
Well, in one of the Mission Impossible movies, I can't remember which one it is, he does a halo jump, which means you're jumping from
That's the newest one.
over 30,000
Yeah.
feet. And he actually does the jump in real, like it's a true stunt. He
Yeah.
halo jumped. And I was reading about it, and he halo jumped into a lightning storm.
Yeah, that's the scene in the movies. They're going through the clouds, and they're so high they go through a lightning storm, and like
Right.
one of them gets electrocuted like midway through.
Right, and you would watch that, and you would say, like, this is CGI. He's, just jumped like off a 10-foot ledge onto a foam padding. He actually halo jumped with a specialized suit because you have to have oxygen to jump from that high, and you have to be extremely skilled to pull that stuff off. That's special ops type shit. And I was reading that, I'm like, all right, that's pretty dope. But for my pick with Mission Impossible versus The Mummy, I went with The Mummy.
Oh shit, we got an upset here.
I love the first two Mummies. I know the Dragon Emperor and the newest one with Tom Cruise are not very good. But the Brendan Fraser ones, the original, The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, are just...
They're great.
They're just great. I mean, you fight the army of Anubis, like... Emotep, like, they're just so good. And, you could talk to my parents. Anytime The Mummy was on, I was watching.
Oh, we're the same
Every
way.
time.
Yeah, anytime it's on, you got
Mission
watch
Impossible, I'll kind of scroll through. So I had to go with
That's
The
an
Mummy.
interesting choice. That's
and-
an upset there because that's a 10 over a 2 seed, right?
Yeah.
In the way we had it. That surprises me. I disagree obviously on that one because I picked Mission Impossible, but
'Cause you're dumb.
I almost forgot too that Tom Cruise was in both franchises because I forgot almost for a second about that new Mummy movie, which, like I said, I think on our last episode, I just watched that new one on TV the other day, and it's not bad, but it's also not good either. I think it's probably a step up from that Tomb of the Dragon Emperor one,
Wow,
but it's
that
also
one's pretty easy to make. A step
it's
up.
also not nearly as good as the first two. But yeah, I don't know. To me, Mission Impossible's much more entertaining. I'd rather sit down and watch a Mission Impossible. every
Yeah,
day.
I just think the first two Mummies I've watched more than all of the Mission Impossibles, and
Yeah, that's fair.
It'll probably continue to be that way.
Yeah.
Just because of how we grew up with those movies, and
Yeah,
They were
they're
just-
great. They're
they were just
super
great.
entertaining. I love them. All right, you want to cover the next one? We're finally moving down to the
yeah.
west.
So
right
we're
here.
moving on to the West. For the first matchup, it looks like we both had the same. It's going to be Marvel versus Jaws. I think this is going to be a pretty quick and easy one. Marvel obviously takes the nod. I think we touched on it last week. Jaws, the first movie was great, but then afterwards it just becomes more of a shark movie, and you're kind of... Speaking of shark movies, side note, we totally forgot to throw Sharknado in to our movie bracket franchise.
That would have been perfect.
Because they're already on like Sharknado 364, so...
Maybe we'll at some point do a whole bracket of like
Those
B
sci-fi
grade
movies.
movie like sci-fi franchises because I bet you we can find a bunch of like Mecha Shark versus Ultra Tarantula or whatever they're doing nowadays.
Yeah, flying pterodactyl versus, underwater sea dragon.
Yeah,
It's like, how
yeah.
did these two ever meet?
And
Like,
it's
well,
the
they
third
met.
one. Keep
Yeah.
in mind you, they made 3. Yeah, I think Marvel is the obvious choice here. Like we said last time, it's the highest grossing franchise ever. We don't see any reason why this is going to slow down at any point. The only reason it's not still dominating the box office this year is because the box office is non-existent because of the pandemic. But Marvel is just doing something that's never been done before in the history of Hollywood. And Jaws, the original, is one of the most iconic movies ever. And the music when the shark's coming up and the fin out of the water and all that stuff. It's an iconic movie. But literally no one cares about the sequels. No one ever talks about them. No one ever goes and rewatches them unless it's like Shark Week during the middle of the summer and AMC's showing them or something.
But even then, you don't want to
Even
watch
then,
them.
it's
You watch the
I'm not
original
watching.
one.
I'm not going to tune in for Jaws 3 and be just riveted
Yeah.
the whole time. But like any Marvel movie, even the bad Marvel movie or quote unquote bad Marvel movies, I'm still going to watch. I've seen all of the Marvel movies multiple times. I don't care what it is. If it's Doctor Strange, if it's Ant-Man,
Right.
one of the lesser known characters, I'm still going to watch that movie when it's
yeah.
on TV or if it's on Disney Plus or whatever.
They trap you.
They're great. They're amazing. And just the way they built the whole thing of, like, think about this for a second. Can you remember seeing the original Avengers in 2012 when it came out? And the little teaser thing at the end of the movie was, after the Avengers defeat Loki's invasion and everything, that dude comes up to Thanos and he's talking about how we haven't been able to conquer Earth because they're unruly or whatever, and Thanos like turns around and smiles. And like since then, 8 years ago, we've all been wondering who the fuck is this giant purple dude who's sitting on this big space throne out in the middle of space, just like overseeing all these chess pieces. And dude, there has never been a villain that has been built up more in a movie series, at least in my mind, that I've ever seen. So the expectations going into Avengers Infinity War, the first one, and then Endgame were as high as they could possibly be, and they met or exceeded all of those expectations, which is the most impressive thing I could possibly imagine for a movie franchise. Like, Thanos is going to go down in the top 2 or 3 greatest villains in movie history, hands down. Not even close.
I think the greatest, we'll touch that real quick. I think you got to go with, Palpatine.
Well, Vader, dude, you got to go Vader from Star Wars.
Yeah, but Palpatine's like,
I mean, Palpatine was the
villain.
puppet master, but Vader's got the voice. He's got the iconic.
Okay, so
look
we'll do a
and-
Vader / Palpatine because they're in the same movie.
Okay.
Then you got Voldemort,
Voldemort's got to be considered in there.
and then
And
you
Thanos,
have to go Thanos.
right?
I mean, Thanos literally snapped and half the world was gone.
Half the universe.
Well, right, and we
Like, the
didn't.
stakes could not be higher for that
And
dude.
besides, some people on Earth, the whole Shield agency, they don't. Half the rest of the Earth doesn't realize what the fuck's happening.
Right.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
So you're just sitting around with your friends. You and me are doing a podcast. All of a sudden, I dissolve into dust and float away, and you're like, "What the fuck just happened?"
right, and then I go, well, I guess this became a solo podcast.
this just real
and-
quickly became a solo podcast. I don't know what happened to Zach. I'm kind of shitting my pants, but
But
yeah.
hey, we're here still.
yeah. So it's got to be Marvel, dude.
Oh,
and they're at, I forget what the actual count was last. It's 20-something,
25, I believe.
25 movies.
There's over 2 for the
With-
last 12 years.
Multiple sequels already planned. I mean, they're just gonna run the box office for the next, I don't know, probably another decade at
Yeah.
least.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that one we went Marvel over Jaws. I don't think that one's much in dispute.
No. And then we both had Rambo versus the Fast and Furious, and I think we both agreed that this was a tough decision.
Yeah,
I did go with Fast and Furious. I just think that those movies are they're just it's become an iconic franchise. I think they're pushing the bounds though with 8, 9, 10, 20, 30 movies now that they're trying to sign up
agree.
for. I think had they stopped after 5 or 6, it would have been probably after Paul Walker passed away. I think we
That
would
would
have
have been my
at
decision,
at
yeah.
a solid. Let's end the franchise here, and that would have been a great. I mean, it could have easily snuck into a 2 seed.
yeah.
In my opinion, but so I did go with Fast and Furious. Nothing against Rambo. I'll always watch Rambo movies.
Yeah,
It's just Fast and Furious. Just there's something about it that
I think the two of us agreed. They're more. The Fast and Furious movies are more like culturally popular.
Yeah.
I would think than Rambo. Rambo has been around longer. He's an iconic character, and I love the Rambo movies. If you're into action or war movies at all, those movies are fantastic. But Fast and Furious, like this one was tough for me because I really do love Rambo, but I think Fast and Furious gets the nod because they're just really, really entertaining movies. I gave up after the 7th one, the one you were talking about where Paul Walker had passed away and they wrote his character out of it kind of.
Yeah.
And I really thought they should have just ended it there, and it really annoyed the shit out of me that they just kept making them. So I kind of I made a decision to kind of boycott the rest of the franchise, but that's not saying anything against how much money those movies make, how entertaining they are.
the big names they drew into the movies.
Yeah, and I don't know. They kind of got stuck in this thing that happens to a lot of franchises where if you keep making them, you then have to keep upping the stakes every single time, and
it became unrealistic.
that becomes super absurd after a while. They go from being very grounded sort of action racing crime movies to now it's like what am I watching a Marvel movie here? Like what's happening?
Like a flying car
what are we
across
doing?
a massive.
Yeah. And they basically just made The Rock's character like a superhero, and it's just
Right.
so I don't know. It gets kind of annoying after a while, but I think I went Fast and Furious on this one just because there are really, as they've gone along and they've gotten more absurd, they've also gotten better at just being big popcorn like summer blockbuster movies, and
Yeah.
they're really entertaining. If you're scrolling through the channels not knowing what to watch, and Fast 5 or Fast 6 or Fast 7's on, it's like I'm gonna check this out. I'm gonna sit here and watch
Oh,
for
yeah.
a little while. Like
They're
really
going to entertain you. I
Yeah.
think they'll entertain you much better than a Rambo would. A Rambo was
Yeah.
going to be more of a
Especially the first
Let's sit
Rambo.
down and
The first
watch.
Rambo is like a real slow burn for a while,
Yep.
and it's like slower pacing, and those ones do the same thing. They're just as guilty as Fast and Furious of getting more and more absurd as they go along. Because now it went from Rambo being like a very grounded sort of dealing with a soldier going through PTSD to now he's just straight up slaughtering like an entire Vietnamese army by himself.
Right.
So those definitely get very absurd as well, but I don't know. I went with Fast and Furious on this one. It was kind of a tough decision. Not the toughest that I ran into on this round 2 matchups we have, but yeah, that was my decision on that one, Fast and Furious.
So that brings us to our next matchup, which we both had Jason Bourne versus Planet of the Apes. So this is a 3-6, Planet of the Apes being the 3, Jason Bourne being 6. I did go with Jason Bourne. I just think when I get the movie franchise is literally this guy's name, but it built a character that, you know, he's an iconic movie character he's like James Bond.
Yeah,
I mean,
hands
it's
down.
just an iconic name that, you know, Planet of the Apes doesn't really have that iconic character because it started so early and they've kind of just caught back up to doing the movies again. They're good movies, but I think Jason Bourne just builds a character that you want to just be like, yeah, like, fuck yeah, here
Yeah,
we go.
it's to that point where you see Matt Damon, you're like, hey, that's Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you see Daniel Craig or Sean Connery or something, you're like, that's James Bond. You
Right.
know? Like, it's become that synonymous with the actor, that character. And yeah, I went with Jason Bourne on this one. I'm just more familiar with the Jason Bourne movies than I am the Planet of the Apes movies. The newest Planet of the Apes trilogy is super dope. I really like those movies. Especially, I think the second one is my favorite. I think it's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. The names are always confusing to me. They kind of named them strange names. But the new trilogy is actually the only ones I've seen. I think I may have seen the one with Mark Wahlberg in it, but I vaguely remember it. But I have more exposure to Jason Bourne. I've seen all of those. I remember them all pretty well. They're just really good spy movies. And like you said, just an iconic character. I mean, he's right up there with James Bond. So I went with Jason Bourne on that one. That's not really an upset, a 6/3. But that's what I went with. Unless you have any other thoughts to add, we can move on to the other matchup. Yeah.
I think our last matchup in the West, I would say it's a pretty easy one. Die Hard and Transformers. I'm only saying it's easy because of the original 3 Transformers are just so good. The cinematic value to them. I believe the storylines in all of them, they just flow so well. It's just, I don't think Die Hard can really beat it. You have just a regular NYPD officer, and then you have, you know, a robot world that's coming in. And I just think that Transformers easily wins that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I went with Transformers on this one. I agree. Transformers over Die Hard. I think the very original Die Hard is a really good movie, very entertaining. It's got a couple of good sequels, but some of the later installments, the more recent ones, are just not very good. And Transformers, like you said, the original 3 are hands down my favorite. And in that one, interestingly enough, the third one in the trilogy is my absolute favorite, the Dark of the Moon one, where they have that big battle in Chicago.
I love
It's my
that one,
favorite
too.
one. It's excellent. And Transformers was one of those weird things where when it was coming out, because that first one came out when we were in high school, and I remember people talking about Transformers coming out as this live action movie, and I'm like, they made a Transformers movie? I'm like, that's going to be dumb. I was very, very skeptical going in, and we went and saw it, and I was blown away. I was like, this is really good. It's a very good, well put together, super entertaining, action packed blockbuster movie, and that whole original trilogy with Shia LaBeouf is like that. I think the newer ones, we kind of covered those a little bit. The ones they made with Mark Wahlberg are getting a little strange. In fact,
It's just weird.
I haven't seen, so since we did our last episode, so I've seen in full the 4th one. So the first one they made with Mark Wahlberg, but I have not seen the 5th one, which is the second one that Mark Wahlberg was in. But it was on TV the other day. I think it's called The Last Night. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen that one.
I haven't.
It was on TV just the other day, and I was watching part of it, and it just reminded me why I kind of gave up on that franchise. I was so lost. It's so strange. Like, he's somehow now... Like, I came in midway through the movie, so I was totally lost on plot, but you would think, having seen all of the other films up until that point, I would be able to follow the story, but it's all over the place, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's some sort of a robot butler to some, like Anthony Hopkins, the guy from like Silence of the Lambs, who plays Hannibal Lecter, plays like some sort of a British dude who's somehow involved in the Transformer thing, but it goes all the way back to like ancient times with like King Arthur and all this stuff. And he has like this robot butler. And Mark Wahlberg's character is a human, but he's also like part robot. He's got like a metal arm underneath his skin. I was really, really confused. And there's like some sort of a task force going around like eliminating Transformers and stuff, like the Autobots.
Yeah.
It's just, they got weird. Like, they got really weird. So all that being said, I still picked that to beat Die Hard, but I think in the next round, I'm not going to get to that yet and say my decision, but I think I'm leaning heavily one way on the Jason Bourne versus Transformers matchup. So
Clearly, Transformers got that one for you.
so anyway, that was it for the East and the West. So now moving up to the South, we have, and this is another one where we diverged a little bit on our matchups. Obviously, we both had Harry Potter advancing.
Obviously.
Your thoughts on Harry Potter are well documented. You had King Kong advancing. I had the Conjuring universe advancing from round one. So currently my round two matchup looks like Harry Potter and the Conjuring universe. And I went Harry Potter on this one. I'm not going to overthink it. I think my thoughts on the Conjuring are pretty much the same as Insidious. The first two installments are terrifying, really good. Two of my favorite horror movies ever, but it's not going to beat Harry Potter. I mean, how many? Is there 8 Harry Potter movies? Well, I guess we have the Harry
7.
Potter series plus Fantastic Beasts now, right? So
Right.
What does that make it? Like 9 or
So
something?
there would be 10 total movies, but 7 was split into part 1 and
That's
part
right. That's
2.
right.
So
Okay.
if you wanted to count, because it's 7 years.
7 years, but 8 movies for the original.
7 years, but
Yeah.
8 movies for the original series.
Yeah,
and they've
and now
released
you got
2
the
of the
prequels.
Fantastic
Yeah.
Beasts.
I think Harry Potter's just a way stronger franchise. I think I have not seen all of the spin-offs. It's kind of tough because The Conjuring, it really is a universe, not a series. Like, they're not all direct sequels. I think they are making a Conjuring 3, but all of the Conjuring universe movies are Annabelle, The Nun. I think The Curse of La Llorona, which just came out a couple years ago,
Yeah,
is
I believe
considered
so.
in that. I haven't seen that yet, but Harry Potter, just as a series, is just way stronger. I don't think The Conjuring can really compete with that with just 2 movies. The 2 movies, Conjuring 1 and 2, I think are very strong, but that's the only 2 I think that are really that good. Harry Potter's got multiple installments out of
Right.
a 10
You
movie
can't really
series that
say
are really good.
one
you
of
know?
the 8 movies in just Harry Potter are bad.
Yeah.
And I've
Because
got
really
a lot
none
to
of them
say
that they
about
made
it.
are bad. None of them had
Right.
bad ratings. They're just like, well, this one's decent. It's not as good as this one, but it's still a
Right.
good movie.
Well, and you have to think too, Harry Potter was the books made those.
Yeah.
And when you look at the book compared to the movie, those movies, they average, they're about 2.5 hours for almost every movie.
Yeah.
If they, just like Lord of the Rings, if Lord of the Rings went with what was in the book, that movie each of them would probably be 5-6 hour movies.
Yeah, you could probably easily on those make entire TV shows like Game of
yeah.
Thrones did. Yeah, and have plenty of material.
And you could do it, but, you don't want to bore an audience with a 6-hour movie.
Yeah.
Although, if Harry Potter made 6-hour movies to cover the whole books, I would watch
We know
all
you'd be
6
watching.
hours every day. But yeah, so I did go Harry Potter versus King Kong, and easiest choice of my life, King Kong.
Psych.
Will not be moving on. Harry Potter will be moving on.
Okay, so Harry Potter's moving on there. We have moving on to our next matchup in the South in round 2. We have Indiana Jones versus Shrek. Now, nothing against Shrek, but I just don't think it has the juice to hang with Indiana Jones. I think Indiana Jones is one of the all-time greatest franchises, and I think that's a pretty easy decision.
Yep, I have to agree. I think if you took the best Shrek, which in my opinion is the original, versus the best Indiana Jones, we could make an argument.
Yeah, if it was just like one movie versus
But-
one movie in the other
But
franchise.
Shrek's one of those franchises that they made, 2 good movies. The third one wasn't terrible, and then it just kind of they're like,
Right.
people love this. So
now
we're
it's
gonna
like
throw a
we're
bunch of
just
shit together
continuing to
and-
make them. Yeah,
And Indiana Jones, I get they're coming out with a new one, and the Crystal Skull wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't a terrible.
It's not
movie.
bad.
And so I gave Indiana Jones the nod as well. I think it just has so much more behind it than Shrek does to push it through the next round.
And as we learned from my trivia in the last episode, Indiana Jones as a franchise has 7 total Oscar wins.
And I don't think Shrek has any.
So there you go.
But that brings us to our next matchup, which we also had a little discrepancy here. So in the first round, I had Lethal Weapon beat Godzilla. I believe Zach had the same. But then I had Underworld upsetting Star Trek.
Which to me is a big upset. And if you go by our seeds, that is also
a big upset. It's a Florida Gulf Coast upset.
Yeah.
But I did go with Lethal Weapon beating Underworld. Lethal Weapon's got just some iconic actors in it. And it's just, they're just movies that I don't get tired of. You can sit there and they're funny. I like the stories behind them. And they just flow. It's good entertainment. Whereas The Underworld, it's a great series and all, but it's kind of can get a little boring.
Yeah. See, the Underworld beating Star Trek was a shock to me. I think having only, like as I kind of covered in our last episode, my experience and my exposure with Star Trek is not the same as it is with Star Wars, where I've seen all of those movies a bunch of times. I know everything about the story. I know everything that's going to happen. I'm not like that with Star Trek. I really like the new movies they've made with Chris Pine, the J.J. Abrams movies. But, Underworld versus Star Trek, to me, seemed like a pretty obvious choice. So I had Star Trek moving on against Lethal Weapon. And then in round 2, Star Trek versus Lethal Weapon, again, seems like an obvious choice to me. It's Star Trek. Like, I like the Lethal Weapon movies, but they all kind of blend together into one movie for me now. And I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I'd rather sit down and watch entertaining sci-fi than I would a buddy cop like drama.
And it's
movie,
it's an older series too. We didn't necessarily grow up with it.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a little bit before our time, so it was one of those things where had those come out maybe when I was like a teenager or my age now, like mid to late 20s, I would have been a lot bigger of a fan of Lethal Weapon, but I gravitate more towards sci-fi, and I really think the Star Trek movies are really great and very entertaining. So I went with Star Trek on that one over Lethal Weapon. But you had, what was yours again? You went Lethal Weapon all the way moving into the Sweet 16.
I went Lethal Weapon over Underworld, yep.
Wow. All right. And Lethal Weapon is a 6 seed. Okay.
Yeah, so not too bad.
Yeah, all right.
A lot of 6 seeds make it to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. Okay, moving on to our next matchup. We did not have a discrepancy here. Our round 2 matchup is the exact same here in the South. We had the DC Universe versus the James Bond franchise. Now, I think it's James Bond hands down on this one. To me, like, these were 2 slam dunks. So my Sweet 16 matchup is going to end up being Star Trek versus James Bond, which is a different discussion. But the DC Universe movies, we covered a lot of the faults of that franchise in our last episode. I think the main issue for me is they just rushed it and tried to catch up to Marvel when they just stood no chance of catching up to Marvel. So they should have just taken their time.
They should have taken their time and done their
up.
own thing.
Yeah.
And I think had they done that, they would have achieved, a much higher level of not only success, but of a following. I get there's hardcore DC versus Marvel. But like you said, DC just seemed like they had to try and rush to stay with Marvel. And Marvel was, they were 20 floors ahead, not 20 steps ahead. They were 20 floors ahead.
Yeah, there was no catch in Marvel.
What was going on.
And it's really disappointing too, because I think the DC universe could have been massive. It really could have been a Marvel-esque universe they built that was just dominating the box office. They're all critically acclaimed, but they screwed the pooch so hard that it's really got a. So who did it? It took out Twilight in round 1, which I think is fair, at least from my perspective. There might be some Twilight fans out there who are upset about that, but it easily wins over Twilight. It easily loses to James Bond.
Easily.
Easily.
I think we can both agree James Bond will, like we said with Jason Bourne, it's just so iconic, and it's been, the people that play him, you have to be an iconic person to play. You're not going to come in and be a no-name that plays James Bond.
And it's one of those things where every time, Daniel Craig is coming back for the No Time to Die movie, but he originally wasn't gonna come back after Spectre, and it was this whole, not even national but international discussion over who's the next actor to play James Bond. It's this big deal, and any A-list actor in Hollywood is clamoring for that role to become the next James Bond, and it's been going on for decades. It's not even close to me, James Bond, on that one.
And didn't Craig sign like a 3-movie, $50 million contract or something to be James Bond?
Not with his latest one. I think he
though?
just agreed to come back for the last one, but he's getting paid an insane amount of money. We could look it up and find out how much it is. It's like hundreds of millions, I'm sure.
It's ridiculous.
So he's making bank, and this is going to be like his 5th one now, I think, or maybe even 6th one.
He started with Casino Royale, right?
Yeah, which is
really
good.
I love that movie,
dude. The Daniel Craig James Bond movies are really good.
Yeah.
I like it. Skyfall is my personal favorite. I think Skyfall is
Skyfall.
amazing. You should definitely check it out. It's really great, and we should get Chris on here sometime to just do a whole James Bond episode and just break down like all his favorites, who his favorite Bond is.
That might be the longest episode in just browsing history.
But yeah, I think James Bond is just a really classic, super great franchise, and yeah, that's a pretty slam dunk.
Pretty easy one.
Yeah.
It'll allow us to move into our final part of the bracket, the Midwest region. And we did have a discrepancy. This was our last discrepancy, actually, of the entire bracket.
We did pretty good in round one. We didn't disagree too many times.
So we both had The Lord of the Rings beating Scary Movie for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then I had Despicable Me beating Transporter. Now, with that being said, I have Lord of the Rings beating Despicable Me. Despicable Me is great. I love those movies. They're fantastic. I wish we grew up with those, so it didn't seem so much like I'm a child when I want to watch Despicable Me. Yeah. But Lord of the Rings is just so iconic. I mean, the lack of CGI in the original 3 movies compared to The Hobbit, it's just, you're like, well, these orcs are makeup. Like, holy shit, they did a lot.
Yeah.
And
the scale of them,
it's just great,
Yeah, I think it's funny on this one. We both had the Lord of the Rings moving on. I had Transporter as the matchup. You had Despicable Me as the matchup against Lord of the Rings. In the end, it doesn't matter because we both had Lord of the Rings advancing to the Sweet 16, and I think that's a pretty obvious decision. It's obvious that it's a number 1 seed. This is one of those, you're expecting whoever it may be, North Carolina or Kentucky, if they're coming in as a 1 seed one year, you're expecting them to go pretty much to the Final Four, if not the finals. And I think with a franchise like Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit, that's going to blow away any competition, really, and especially Despicable Me or Transport. I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter who.
That's one of those ones where, that's the 8-9 matchup where in college basketball, you're stoked as either of those teams. If you win that first round game, you're like, hey, we're advancing to the second round, and then you just get smacked by North Carolina or something.
Or you're the 8-9 that shows up and you push them, and then you upset them, and then you go get smacked by the 4 or 5 team, or the 12 that decided to smack 5 and 4, and then they smack you, and then they go get smacked.
Yeah, I think there's not as much chaos in our bracket here. A lot of these are more obvious, and obviously it's not like a sporting event where the outcome is uncertain. It's all opinion
right,
based.
It's all
There's no scoring or anything, but this one, that really is why we sat down and came up with the seeding on this, because the Lord of the Rings is a 1 seed, and Transporter and Despicable Me are definitely like 8 and 9.
Right. I mean, because we could flip flop all these seeds and have Lord of the Rings be a 16 and Scary Movie be the 1,
but
and you'll just have a bunch of 16 seeds in the championship. So the seed doesn't matter.
Yeah, the seeding doesn't really matter as much, but it's if you really were going to sit down and say, okay, who are the top 4 number 1 seeds of movie franchises? I think we pretty much
nailed it.
So on that one, we both had Lord of the Rings advancing. Matt had his advancing past Despicable Me. I had Lord of the Rings advancing past Transporter, which are really cool movies, but just not going to get it done in this matchup.
Not going to get it done.
Moving on to the next matchup in the Midwest. This one, I thought when we were looking at this matchup at the end of the last episode, I thought this was going to be really tough. But now that I'm thinking about it, it's a little more obvious.
It's simplified.
It's Predator versus Terminator, and Matt and I had we both had this matchup going into round 2. 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger-led franchises, although with Predator, he was only in the first one. But I think it's Terminator here.
Yeah.
And I think Terminator, it's funny, I listened to an entire podcast recently about how the last 3 movies that they've released have all been trying to be, or the last 4 movies they've all released have all been trying to be the best number 3 in the Terminator like story.
Right,
they're all trying to
fighting.
be number 3, and they keep rewriting the story and undoing stuff and playing with time travel and stuff. The first 2 are some of the best sci-fi / action movies you're ever going to see. Terminator 2, like I said, is one of the all-time greatest sequels ever made. And really, the bad Terminator movies are still pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're
entertaining.
It's tough because if you make a bad movie in the Terminator franchise, it sucks because you're going to be compared to Terminator 2 and
Right.
Terminator 1, which are 2 really amazing movies. So if you made, if it was a franchise that didn't have some just outstandingly good movie in it, if you made number 5 and it was just all right, everyone would be like, well, nice try. Like, that was a good movie.
Right.
Cool, whatever.
Great entertainment value.
But yeah, but if it comes out in a series like Terminator and everyone's seen Terminator 2 and knows what the bar,
was it
like
better
where the
than
bar
Terminator
is set.
2? And everyone's like, no. It's like, all right, well,
Yeah,
come out with
exactly.
another
No
one.
one fucking cares. They're just like, hey, was it better than Terminator 2? And you're like, well, if I'm being honest, no. You're like, okay, well, get out of here with that shit. Like,
Bring on the next one. We'll wait. I'll
try
wait.
again.
Yeah.
Try again. So I think I went with Terminator on this one. I really like Predator. The first one, it's funny. This is kind of like I mentioned last time. Both of these franchises, I think the first installments, I can't remember which one I saw, but one of these, either Predator 1 or Terminator 1, was the first R-rated movie I ever saw. So, like, I will remember these franchises forever. And the
Yeah.
first one is just super dope. Just Arnold running around in the jungle, like, smearing mud all over himself to try and hide from the Predator and, like, building all these traps and stuff. And he's the last one surviving. It's awesome. And they've made a bunch of kind of lackluster sequels.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
But the whole idea of the Predator is dope, and it's iconic. Talk about like an iconic character from a movie.
Oh, yeah.
But I think this one's Terminator.
I agreed. I mean,
That's a 4 versus 5. That's actually a pretty good.
that's
a good
it's a
matchup.
hard matchup. And now we're getting into those, are the Sweet 16 is going to be, well, I'm a huge fan of both, but, I got to give the edge to this
Yeah.
one. But
It's
for
one of
that-
those ones where, same like you said, I'm a giant fan of both these franchises, but with a lot of these, you got to sit there for a second and go, I got to be honest with myself here, and go, which one's really bad?
Right,
It's Terminator.
If you're at that point where you gotta think about it, the best way, like in my opinion, I'm gonna go about it is if I have all of the movies for both franchises in front of me,
Yeah.
what movie, doesn't matter the order, what movie am I gonna grab? And I'm gonna grab a Terminator movie, which means I'm gonna have to go with Terminator.
Yeah.
And Predator's great, but yeah, I don't think you can beat Terminator right now.
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfortunate matchup for Predator, because I think had it matched up against, so it could have matched up against Poltergeist from round 1, which I think I'd take Predator over Poltergeist,
Yeah.
but not over Terminator. It's got to be Terminator there. So I think we both agree there. So we both had Terminator advancing to the Sweet 16. So down to our second to last matchup in round 2 in the Midwest, we have the Rocky franchise versus Jurassic Park. So I actually was going, right before we started recording, I was going through and filling out my answers, and I left this one blank. I'm still kind of undecided on this. I need you to pitch me either way here. Sell me on this decision. one way or
While
another.
you're undecided on this, I'm a huge Rocky fan. Jurassic Park's great. I did go with Rocky. You got an underdog. Think back to the original Rocky. This guy is a nobody. Apollo Creed goes, just give me anybody, give some random guy a chance. He's getting his ass kicked. I mean, in true boxing, he should have never been allowed to continue to fight. He
Yeah.
should have been down and out for the count.
Rocky Balboa is not a big fan of
Rocky Balboa is the
Using-
definition of CTE.
using defense other than just his head. He just
Yeah.
kind of like leads forward, charges with his head, and just gets punched in the face.
goes,
live.
"Gah!"
It just keeps going.
But I mean, think about it. Rocky he's an underdog in every fight he goes into. Yeah, he wins and he becomes a champion, and to me, he's more of a people champion.
He's the people's champ. For sure, yeah.
He comes from nothing. He goes to everything
From the rough streets of Philadelphia.
right? To he trained by fighting in a meat locker. or
Yeah.
that's how he trained. He trained on punching the meat in the meat locker. This guy just becomes so iconic that he then goes, and I get it's a movie and it wouldn't have probably happened in real life. He then goes and avenges his friend who was killed in a boxing match, which then turns into a political boxing match when he beats a Russian on Russian soil, and
What a
then you
great
get the
movie.
Russians to stand up and clap for you in the middle of the Cold War.
Rocky IV.
I mean,
is there a more American movie out there?
we'll get into that later.
It'd be hard to find. I mean,
But-
that movie is America's fuck.
But then you got like Miracle that comes in as America's fuck. Where
that's
we're
true.
like a
That's
bunch
true.
of college kids and we come beat the best team ever.
That's true. But yeah,
We'll save that for another one.
Rocky IV is my favorite out of the. Well, yeah, okay. It's my favorite out of the Rocky franchise. Because you also got to consider the Creed movies. Which, do you like the Creed
I
movies?
like the Creed movies. I
Yeah.
think
I'm
my
a
biggest
big
issue
fan of the
is
Creed movies.
they just follow the Rocky storyline.
Yeah.
Which to me is like, all right, you guys could have deviated a little bit off the path
Yeah.
and not, you could have just a little bit, but they kind of just followed the same path.
Same. There's a formula. For
But
sure.
it's a great, they're great movies. I do have to say, think about this. Stallone took a punch and almost died in the filming of Rocky IV.
From Dolph Lundgren.
From
who's
Dolph
like an
Lundgren.
actual martial artist. I
Right.
think.
He's
Yeah.
he's one, and he's got
And
like
huge.
a PhD and like a doctorate in.
Very interesting dude, Dolph Lundgren.
But Sylvester Stallone goes, "I want you to punch me as hard as you can," and I think he was in the hospital for
I remember hearing
a couple
about this,
days,
yeah.
if not a full week. Think about that. That dude goes, "Yeah, hit me so I know what it feels like to get hit by you." He literally risked his life to film these movies. No one in Jurassic Park did that.
I think the longer I've been sitting here thinking about it, I'm going to go Rocky. Because I think Rocky, we're talking about iconic movie characters like Jason Bourne and James Bond. Rocky Balboa is one of the all-time iconic movie characters. The training montages throughout
Well,
all these movies
And
are
don't
some
tell
of
me
the most iconic shit.
when you weren't a little kid and you saw that and he gets to the top of the steps, you don't throw your hands
Yeah,
up when you
dude,
run to the top of the
Absolutely. And the Eye of the Tiger
Yep.
song is now literally synonymous with those movies. And I think on these, the original Rocky series is amazing. And the fourth one is my favorite, the one where he fights Ivan Drago.
steps. Yep.
But the Creed movies are also considered part of the Rocky franchise. And I'm a huge fan of the Creed movies. I think they're really, really good. I think
they're great
that
too.
puts it over the edge of Jurassic Park because Jurassic Park, I think the first one is hands down the best. I
Yeah.
think the first two are really good. The third one, not as good, but still pretty entertaining. But I think the Jurassic World sequels have just been a little bit underwhelming. I think the first Jurassic World was pretty good. The one after that, Fallen Kingdom, got kind of strange. The storytelling was a little bizarre in that
Yeah.
movie. And I think when you encapsulate Creed into Rocky, to me, that tips Rocky over the edge in this matchup.
Well,
This is
and-
real. I say that this is a very
This is
tough
a-
decision for me. 'Cause
yeah.
I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan. I love the Jurassic
Well,
Park movies.
but with Jurassic Park 2, it kind of follows the same thing as Rocky. They kind of follow the same exact storyline. The first the first new one goes, and you discover all of the old buildings on the same island.
Yeah,
And it's just
yeah.
more of an
We've done that before.
It's just more of
Yeah.
an updated island.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Sure, there's some new dinosaurs.
It's like now it's
and-
Jurassic Park, but with iPads.
Right, and there's a little bit, Chris Pratt's training the
Yeah.
Velociraptors, and then they crossbreed a Velociraptor and a T-Rex.
Yeah, yeah.
To be this just murder machine. Like, okay, yeah, they have a little bit of a different storyline, but the first one goes, this is the baddest dinosaur to exist.
Yeah.
And you got to run.
Yeah.
And
And
good
it's
luck.
and it's the whole. I really like the deeper themes too with Jurassic Park of the whole kind of playing God question of the morality of is it correct for us to do this if we have the science and the technology to really bring these beasts, these monsters back from the dead and put them in a theme, basically a Disney World theme park.
Right, just a zoo.
Yeah, just a zoo and a Disney World theme park combined. Should we? And
No.
the question over and over and over again in that franchise is a resounding no.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Something bad always happens.
Everyone's going to get eaten, or most people are going to get eaten, and the whole island's going to be destroyed. and then you're going to come around and just move to a different island and start the whole thing up over again in 10 years,
Right.
when all the lawsuits stop.
And then it's going to happen again because you didn't learn anything.
Yeah, so I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan. I will always love those movies, but Rocky gets the nod. I think that's a tough 6 versus 3 matchup. Rocky at the 6th seed, so Rocky advancing to the Sweet 16 for me and for you.
Yeah.
So with our last matchup in the Midwest, this is the last matchup of the round of 32. We have, and I don't think we disagreed on this one from round 1. It's Halloween versus Pirates of the Caribbean, and I'm not going to overthink this one at all. I'm going Pirates of the Caribbean.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean,
I'm not really sure even what I could try and, if I was going to try and pitch Halloween, I don't even know what I would
although
do.
I will say, I saw and was reading an article that they're trying to bring in Zac Efron to replace Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow.
What?
If they do that, I will no longer watch those Pirates movies. I will only watch the Johnny Depp.
That's a bold choice.
Now, I don't know if it is a true
or just some
statement,
kind of rumor thing.
but I saw that and I was, he's the one character you can't replace. You got to think, Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow is the iconic role. You don't go to watch for, Elizabeth Turner and Will Turner, You go to watch for Captain Jack Sparrow and what kind of bullshit he's going to
It's just
doing.
Johnny Depp just chewing up the screen time, just being
Yeah.
like, look at me, it's an excuse for him to be super weird too, which I feel like he's just been looking
He's
for
just in his
whole
natural
career. Yeah,
habitat.
just in his natural habitat. Like, can I just be weird as fuck?
Yeah.
And it's
and make
funny,
millions
right?
of dollars.
And just get paid bank to make it. And they're really, really good movies. I mean, I think we discussed it last time. The latest one is not very good, but what was that, number 5? I think the 4 prior to that, I'm a big fan of. All 4 of them were really good. The Curse of the Black Pearl, the original, is just an excellent movie. It's
so good. I mean,
so yeah, I think Pirates of the Caribbean easily takes out Halloween there. It's another one of those tough things. Like, I can't pitch much on Halloween because I don't have that much exposure to Halloween. I've seen the original, I've seen the newest one, and I've seen bits and pieces of those random sequels that they made in between those two. They've made a billion of them. I don't know. I just, the Michael Myers thing is really iconic. It's an iconic horror movie franchise.
Right.
If this was like a horror movie bracket, it might be moving on. But going up against Pirates of the Caribbean, that's a
tough
2
draw.
seed. I think the 2 seed's going to just easily roll. In this,
I agree.
this
I think
matchup.
Pirates is just too iconic to not. I mean,
Yeah. How are we doing on time? Do we want to keep advancing to the Sweet 16?
I think we hold on Sweet 16.
Okay.
I think we'll do Sweet 16 and Elite 8 next week.
Okay. I like that idea.
I think we'll be able to cover, it'll be pretty much the same amount of teams at that point in time
Yeah.
than we did today.
Yeah, Sweet 16 and the Elite 8, that's when you start getting down to the nitty-gritty. Because I'm looking at some of these matchups, and I'm like, wow, these are going to be tough
Yeah, if
decisions.
we went into Sweet 16 right now, it'd probably be another 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Because it took us, we're at the 53-minute mark, and
This will be our shortest episode yet if we stop
Yeah.
right now. Yeah.
but with that being said, go to the Podbean
Yeah.
website and, fill out a bracket, email it back to us, comment on it. Taya, Zach's fiance, finally, and her coworkers at, the
Craig Hospital.
Craig Hospital.
Yeah, we got quite a few submissions.
They,
here
I
for
think
the
we have
bracket.
about 13 brackets that they filled out. So please feel free to fill out a bracket. Send us yours. We're not going to judge. We will judge you, though. And, at the end, when Zach and I go through everything and announce our champions, we'll go through a lot of these brackets and, see how many people had what and maybe pick an oddball out and, hope they don't listen. But,
I
tear 'em
skimmed
apart
through
and-
these results that she handed in from her coworkers, and I have to say there's a couple that I'm going to need to spend some time on and go over those. Oh, there we go.
And so, if you didn't hear that, Zach is pounding his drink bottle, and
Oh, is that what I was doing?
yeah, and my 5-month-old puppy decided that she has to be tough and try and protect the household.
All right, well, I won't do that next time.
when
I didn't
nothing is
realize what I was
happening.
doing.
So she's
But yeah.
barking at nothing.
Yeah. But no, what she was barking at is these ridiculous choices on some of
Right,
these brackets,
yeah.
which is what I was trying to
I
say.
mean, this first one though, I
There's-
will say, is a Harry Potter. So you're obviously on the top of my list if I ever meet you.
I mean, I will say this is not really a spoiler alert because I think most people looking at this bracket would kind of think this way, but a lot of our submissions we have for champions, you see a lot of Star Wars, you see a lot of Marvel,
Yep.
and there's definitely several Harry Potters in there, which does not surprise me
But
in
then,
the least.
you
But
know,
there are a couple
The
of
second bracket I see,
really
we have a
crazy.
National Lampoon.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. So we'll go over when we get down to the finals and our final matchup and Matt and I's decision of who the greatest movie franchise is of all time out of these 64. We'll go over some of these submissions, and if you guys want to go online, fill these out, submit them to us. We'll definitely go over your results as well, and maybe pick. And we'll go over probably some of the most common
Yep.
champions we have, some of the crazier ones. I definitely want to spend some time on the crazier ones because
Yeah.
there's definitely a couple
we can
in there that I've
dissect
seen
their
that are like,
championship
this is
route.
insane. Yeah, to just talk about exactly like how this 16 seed has made it all the way here. So we'll definitely go over a lot of that. But yeah, I guess we're just spending a couple minutes here at the end just plugging our stuff.
We might as well. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, go fill them out. You know, leave a comment, leave a like on the this episode. Tell us if you agree or disagree with either Zach or I. I mean, you might disagree with both. We had two different picks today. I went with the Mummy and Lethal Weapon, and Zach did not go with either of those, so nobody cares about his opinion. But yeah, just comment on it. Go on the YouTube if you need to. We are on iTunes.
Yeah, that's the big
And-
thing is we're officially on iTunes now. So
Yep.
what do we have? Podbean, we got YouTube, we're on
Podbean,
iTunes.
YouTube, iTunes. We're working to get onto Google. I think it's Google Podcast or like Google Cast.
Yeah.
And then I believe after next week episode, we're going to submit to try and get on Spotify.
Yeah.
That way we give all of you beautiful listeners another avenue to access this.
Yep.
Or to spread the word. We are on Facebook if you want to look at just browsing. Go like the page. We're going to be posting every episode link on there to the Podbean. We have the YouTube link up there, I believe, and the iTunes link up there, I believe. So, feel free to go on there too. Drop some comments, leave a like, tell us stuff you'd like to hear in another episode. I think we're going to finish this movie bracket out in the next two, and then, maybe jump into the NBA playoffs.
Yeah.
Because they'll probably be rolling in the next 2 weeks easily. So,
Yeah. I think they're supposed to start like right after my birthday here
yeah.
in a little bit. So, yeah.
You can leave Zach a happy birthday as he's turning 42 on Saturday. So,
Yeah, definitely. 26 going on 42. But yeah, we're gonna once we finish up the movie franchise bracket, we're gonna start getting into some different topics. So definitely leave some comments, some suggestions of what you'd like to hear us talk about. The title of the podcast is Just Browsing, so we were planning on just browsing through the topics, but it just so happens that these first few episodes have been very movie centric, which is fine with me. I can talk movies for a long time.
Well,
so.
I think it's great because we did this. We filled out this bracket. It had to have been. Why we didn't put Men in Black in is because we filled this out probably 4 years ago.
That's true. And
So,
by then they hadn't had
the
a fourth
international
movie
hadn't
yet,
been
yeah.
made, and same with Jumanji.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So when we posted this on Reddit, and I don't even think one person viewed it on
Yeah.
Reddit.
Yeah.
And
It was
so
not- it
I
was
think
not
we
the
wanted
best
to talk
place
about
to
it
go, yeah.
because we were interested to see like what other people
Yeah.
thought about it, and I think there's a lot of movie buffs amongst our friends and family, and their friends and family that we could
Absolutely.
get enough feedback to kind of build this out into like a true thing. And so I like it. I mean, I think you guys, the listeners, will just have to let us know how it's going and what you'd want to see. We can keep doing brackets.
Yeah, we can definitely do more brackets. That'll be fun.
I think we'll fill out an NBA playoff bracket, and Zach and I can go through our choices there.
I definitely want to get into the NBA playoffs, especially with the whole new bubble atmosphere and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. That'll be very interesting to kind of dive into. So,
But yeah, leave your comments, leave your likes. I will say this for both Zach and I, we do want to avoid politics. This is supposed to be a fun, happy, come shoot the shit with one of your best friends podcast. We want you guys to enjoy listening and not sit here and go, well, I disagree with everything you say. I hate you. So let's keep it light. Let's keep it, in a positive atmosphere. And, I look forward to next week's, Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. I think we'll cover both of those next week, and then the following week we'll be into our Final Four and our championship matchup, which will lead into
That'll be great.
seeing all of your brackets and
Yeah.
either making fun of your bracket or agreeing with it and trying to become best friends.
And you can hear Matt and I just argue repeatedly over Harry Potter versus Star
It'll
Wars.
be an
which we all
ultimate
know that's
argument.
what it's boiling down to.
It might not necessarily be an argument because I don't think we're going to change either of our minds on
No.
it. It's going to be more of a
And we really do each
backing
of us,
of our opinion,
Yeah.
and then we'll obviously agree
Yeah.
with each other because I don't think we can disagree that either are better because it's an opinionated
Yeah,
well,
well, and
topic.
that's what I was going to say too. Is neither of us. It's not like you hate Star Wars and I hate Harry
Right.
Potter. I love Harry Potter.
But I
happen
don't have to sell you to be like, dude,
yeah.
you got to
Like, I
watch
love
it.
I'm about to reread the books. I love Harry Potter.
Yeah, I need
So-
to reread the books, but
But like, it's just one of
Fuck
those things that
stay dumb forever.
it's one of those things that I just happen to like Star Wars more. So it's obviously as we said when we first started this last episode, this is all opinion based. We just want to have fun with it. We
Yep.
thought it'd be fun to just throw 64 movie franchises into a bracket and just whittle them down because there's really no way with this kind of stuff to really determine the number one unless you just throw them into a bracket. That's why I love
Right.
March Madness. It's like you can't claim you're the national champion unless you win a 64 team bracket. You got to fight your way through. You got to win every matchup.
Right.
And that's the best way to do it.
And this is obviously an opinionated bracket, but you can go see, the goal here is to try and put you into tough decisions to where you do get to, Star Wars versus Harry Potter and you go, oh shit, these are my two favorite. Now I got to truly pick out which one I'm going to watch. And, hopefully you guys can get through it. Hopefully you guys can, get us some feedback, get us these brackets. And, after we've already told you our champions, but after we dig into why, we'll go through your brackets and we'll, give you guys some shout outs. So,
Yeah. I think with that, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to cover?
no, I
before we
think we're
wrap up?
good. Just leave a like, leave a comment, and, stay blessed and have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.